To sit with you. Thank you for joining me.
Great to be with you, Mark.
First of all, you're here doing many interesting things, including touring and visiting various places in Canada and the United States. What did you talk about?
On this tour, I've decided to focus on trying to describe to people the challenges that they face as a Jewish people and that Israel faces and the Jewish people face. And some of these challenges are in our face, and yet they hide as other they masquerade themselves.
For example?
Okay, so the three challenges that I issued or showed that are really in our face right now, the first is delegitimization. Delegitimization is something that we live with, and it's a subtle process, right? And it's a process that Hitler also began with first. Way before the Holocaust was a process of letting the world know that Israel isn't, or the Jewish people in that case, are not valuable, they're not good, they're somehow lower caste, lower people, they're akin to dogs, and slowly and subtly, but surely, when the time came for the Holocaust, the mind was ready for it. Israel faces that kind of delegitimization daily. The folks at the lead of that are people like Ahmadinejad, who calls Israel a disease, and then he says that our society is imploding from within. And the most important thing is that he says that Israel is a bunch of white people who have come from Europe, taken somebody else's land, have no history, none whatsoever. And of course, we have to thank the great historian Yasser Arafat for being able to completely unwrite Jewish history in the land of Israel. So therefore, the Kotel was never a Jewish acquisition. It was never our land. Western Wall, right? It was never Jewish. There's no history of the Jewish people. And a place where I live, for example, the Mount of Olives, where there's 2,000 years of 150,000 Jewish burials, I'm an occupier somehow in this land. We are not Middle Easterners, according to Ahmadinejad. So slowly, subtly, but surely, the delegitimization is out there. And it's, of course, here even on American campuses and North American campuses in Canada as well. So that's challenge number one. And I answer that challenge by saying, if you have delegitimization as one concept, what is the fighting concept? What beats delegitimization? There's one word only: knowledge. Knowledge beats delegitimization. If you know your history, if you know your rights, and you can articulate them and stand up for them, nobody can take it away. Because delegitimization is a type of lie. It tries to unteach the truth. So knowledge is what I'm preaching to answer delegitimization. The second challenge is a challenge that we Jewish people have gone through for the last 4,000 years of our history: division. We love to divide amongst ourselves. We will sit at a table, talk to a Jew that agrees on a fellow Jew that agrees on 95% of all things. We find those 5%, we pick it out, and we make sure to argue it out, and so that everybody will know that we disagree. And that's a great danger, because we need unity right now. But our division there are many other divisions. One of the biggest divisions in the Jewish world is the Atlantic Ocean. Because the Atlantic Ocean separates between one group of 6 million and another group of 6 million. And these two 6 millions are living completely different lives. They're watching different TV. They're growing up with different values. One goes to the army, the other one goes to college. One goes on furlough, the other one goes to Acapulco. And these are completely different mental sets. And our people, culturally, and here in Shalom TV, we celebrate all things Jewish, the Jewish culture. And if Jewish culture is separated and different in these two worlds, we are divided. And there's further divisions. I speak about this on campus shamelessly. I talk about the division of intermarriage. When Jewish boys aren't attracted to Jewish girls, and Jewish girls not attracted to Jewish boys, and we're somehow interested in others around us, which is legitimate, but it's a type of division. And we lose our peoplehood through that. And we lose our cultural integrity as well.
How do young people react when you say this?
They appreciate the honesty because they know the pull. And after I gave a speech talking about this issue of division as well, girls came up to me and told me, I'm going out with a non-Jewish boy, but I really want to go out with a Jewish boy, and here's my problems, here's my issues. They want to talk about it. I'm not there to judge them. I'm there to show them a truth that they know their parents have told them 100 times. But they have their issues, and they need to talk it out. I don't need to whitewash that. I need to actually open it up for them and let them actually feel like I'm a person who's cool enough to handle and they tell me a lot of times, well, I'm embarrassed to tell you. I tell them, been there, done that. Let's talk about this, all right? Mm-hmm. And that opens up the conversation. But then the one that really gets them, Mark, the one that really, really hushes the crowd, especially with students, is the third and greatest challenge of the Jewish people today, that is like a net spread over all of us, a matrix that sits heavy on all of our people in Israel and in America, and we don't even know it. We call it by different names because we don't want to admit it. And that most powerful force today is fear. Fear is everywhere. I meet young people who tell me, I wanted to go to yeshiva in Israel. I wanted to go to an Israeli yeshiva to study, but I thought to myself, I'm not going to be able to master Hebrew. An 18-year-old. And I said to them, young man, Hebrew is already inside of you. It's pre-programmed in the Jewish people. You're afraid to go to Israel to study Hebrew at 18? I meet girls who tell me I'd like to go to Birthright, but I'm scared. I say to them, do you realize that there's some guy in Afghanistan who has done a bad thing, made sure to shoot the bad thing in HD video, made sure to upload it nicely onto YouTube, and made sure that you would see it so that somewhere in South Florida, a young 18-year-old Jewess is afraid to go to her homeland. You're already a victim. Because terror is the broadcasting of fear. And fear is when Israel says, oh, we have a ramp up to the Temple Mount. It's a little bit shaky. It's dangerous. We'd like to fix it. But then Jordan says, don't you do that. And then we say, oh, Jordan doesn't like it. We might stir up the Arab world because we want to fix a bridge that's rickety and dangerous. And we don't react normally because we're afraid. Or when Israel wants to take certain steps, but the world says no. Well, we can't live in a vacuum. We're afraid. Yishai, you have to recognize that we're not alone in this world. And I speak with people and I analyze what they're saying to me. And within a few minutes, I say to them, do you know that everything you just told me is based on fear? Your whole philosophy, what you call pragmatic, realistic, and other fancy words, is nothing but a cover for fear. And good people, people who are intellectually honest, sometimes pause and they think through their mental set and they're like, you're right. Young people go just silent when I talk about fear because they start to analyze themselves and they realize how much fear they live with. And that whole set of anxiousness, of nervousness, of being afraid, and of also loving Israel through, oi, give out the pain of Israel, oh, where's Israel today? All these negative, kind of sad, emotional perspectives are completely unnecessary. We need to be proud. We need to look at problems and address them and say, oh, here's a social problem, for example, in Beit Shemesh. There's a problem in Beit Shemesh. Good. The guy who spat in the face of a little girl is in jail now. It's a police issue. Somebody's assaulting our children. I don't care if it's Jewish, non-Jewish. Somebody's assaulting my children. He's going to jail. And we have a social problem between a group that comes from a different cultural understanding. We'll come to an equilibrium. We're going to deal with the problems. It's exciting to deal with problems. It's a challenge. It's the building of a Jewish state, which is the most exciting project of the Jewish people.
So let's talk about fear for a moment. And I want you to talk about what you experience both on the Israeli scene and you are, again, you occupy a very unusual...
Oh, don't use the word occupation.
you represent a very unique position in the Jewish world because you are so much at home in America and you're so much at home in Israel. And by the way, you should spend one moment, just so our audience understands, your own background in terms of American Israel is?
I was born in Haifa, Israel, to Russian refuseniks.
And you speak Russian as well?
I speak Russian as well, and I even speak in Russian on the tour. I clamor through it, I get through it, and I love it. But people like yourself, your generation, helped my parents get out from the Soviet Union. I always say to people, the greatest success of American Jewry is Russian Jewry. 1 million Jews were let go from the prison that you remember. A lot of the young people today don't understand what it means to have a prison that was a country. So my parents left the Soviet Union, came to Israel. They were secular, lived in Haifa. And economics forced us to move to America, moved to New Jersey.
How old were you?
8 till 17, I was here. I was in the regular track. And then I ended up going to a modern Orthodox high school, Frisch. That's well known. But I was getting caught up in some stuff that was unnecessary, and I realized that I needed to skip senior year, and I needed to go to Israel. And I went to Israel, went to yeshiva, and then to the army. I went to the paratroopers. and I was injured in Lebanon by a roadside Hezbollah bomb. And after I finished my time in the Army, my stint, my tour of duty, I came back to America, and I went to Yeshiva University, right across the street, and then to Cardozo Law School. And that's where I met my wife, Malka. Her name was Melissa back then. And we decided to get hitched, and we went out to the homeland to get married. We happened to have gone to Hebron,
Yes.
where I think the seed of monotheistic civilization, it begins there. And the patriarchs and the matriarchs are buried there. And we wanted to have a very normal wedding at this very contentious place that we think is the beginnings of the Jewish rights to Israel.
Of course, it is now an Arab city.
It's mostly an Arab city. It's 250,000 Arabs living in freedom with tremendous success, tremendous economic success. I was just there, and they're doing really well. They have a big new mall, and I just look over at the pier at the marketplaces. They're full, they're bustling. And there is a sliver inside that city, a protected corridor, in which sadly the Jewish people have to live somewhat defensively. We should be living in peace with our cousins, but we have a little army that protects the Jewish people's rights to their ancestral homeland. And sadly, there's really an atmosphere of tension there. Thank God there are now cooler voices, including Sheikh Jabri, who is a sheikh, an important tribesman, Arab. He would identify himself as Palestinian, who has really alternative perspectives on how we can make peace and live a decent life of tolerance in our region. He is not a jihadist. He understands the rights of the Jewish people and respects our place there. So we're finally starting to find cooler, tolerant heads that are tired of the jihadist, destructive, and toxic atmosphere, and are looking to make a life with with the Jewish cousins in a broader Arab Middle East.
At what point do you decide really to reestablish your base, your home in Israel?
Before I even went out with Malka, I told her, I said, listen, I'm not marrying anybody who doesn't want to move to Israel. You know, I was lucky to be born in Israel. And I mean by that is when you're a Sabra, the call of the blood calls back at you. I sound like an American, but when you're born in Israel, it pulls at you. And I'm lucky enough to not have that challenge of being overly in love with America. I really respect America tremendously, but the beach in Israel, the Jerusalem, the Hermon and the Eilat, the Hebron and the Tel Aviv, they speak to me. And the Jewish people there speak to me, and the Jewish history speaks to me. And at the end of the day, Mark, this is a great country. And so is Canada, by the way. Very impressive country. This is a great country. The question is, do you love your homeland? Are you in love? And so you could see other pretty ladies on the street, but you got the wife that you love, and that's where you go back home to. And I'm jealous for Jerusalem. I think it's great when we develop New York or Toronto and the Jewish people are doing well here, and that's fabulous. But we have to be jealous for Jerusalem. We have to be jealous for our homeland because we're involved in this project. And it's so exciting, and sometimes I think we treat it a little bit as a stepchild. It's got to be number one. And everything else that we do, which is important, has to be number two.
Do you have dual citizenship?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So I say you again, have a unique ability to look at both the Jewish world in Israel and the Jewish world here in the United States. And I now want to come back to what you have identified as the greatest challenge, confronting contemporary Jewish life. One at a time, I want you to talk about what fear is in Israel and what fear is here in the United States among American Jews. And there are many people, Yishai, who really believe American Jews live at the edge of fear here in America, as comfortable as we are. And there are those of us, if you said to me, have I experienced anti-Semitism in my life? I have experienced anti-Semitism as a child, rarely, but boy, do those moments stand out in my memory.
Right.
But ever since I was in high school, through college, I went to Columbia, then rabbinical school, then have been in professional broadcasting and television and radio my entire life while being, lucky me, a rabbi of a wonderful group of people in Connecticut.
Which I got a chance to meet in
Yes,
Israel.
you did. I shared them with you. So I have not known anti-Semitism. for me, Sandy Koufax doesn't pitch on Yom Kippur. And lo and behold, the World Series has changed when the Mets are playing the Red Sox so that it doesn't conflict with Yom Kippur in New York. And my point is that Jews have a sense that they live in a country in which being Jewish is no longer an issue. 97% of the support of Israel is from non-Jews in this country. In some way, ironically, there is a greater acceptance and appreciation for the state of Israel in the non-Jewish community than there is in terms of the Jewish community. I don't think there are 97% of American Jews feel about Israel the way 97% of the general American population feels about Israel. But for all of how wonderful it is to be a Jew here, maybe it is still I was going to use the word price, but there's a better word. I can't find it at the moment. What the scar of the Holocaust that the Jew carries with him is such that the Jew always has in him the question, will it happen again? And we were aware of how happy and comfortable and, quote, assimilated Jews were in Germany. And yet the Holocaust came to them. And so there is, Yishai, here in America, the edge of fear, even among American Jews, who are always concerned, will it turn? Now, I want to hear it from you. Save Israel. At the moment, talk to me about your experience or your understanding or your insight about what drives Jewish fear in this country.
The fears, a lot of them are connected to Israel.
That's correct.
The fear is connected to Israel. It's if I identify myself with Israel, I will be outcast. If I say something wrong, I will be maligned. I was in a conference right now, and this young college student said in the room, he goes, "I have a Palestinian professor, and she treats me very well. I haven't had any problems with her." This other girl says, "How could you say that? You're assuming and implying, therefore, that you should have a problem with Palestinian professors." And she got so heated about it, and it was like, the political correctness is to such a level that he couldn't even say that I like this Palestinian professor. And it reminded me of the story in Israel where we had a Hebrew University professor who said that the reason the Israeli army does not rape Palestinian women is because they dehumanize them to such an extent that they're not even people. It's like, come on, let's keep it real. So the fears are about Israel. It's about sending our kids to Israel. And also, of course, there's a fear that is actually unique to the United States, which is the fear of dual loyalties. That is not, by the way, found in Canada.
Really?
Fascinating. The cultural understanding of what Canada is completely different to the United States. Canada is a place to live in their mind. You could totally be an Italian national. It's the greatest concentration of Italians and Chinese outside of those host countries, out of the original countries. You can fly a flag and nobody even thinks twice about it, an Israeli flag, because it's like, you're just living here. They don't have a country identity like the United States, which is an American, proud American. The whole issue of dual loyalties doesn't even exist there. Here in America, stepping out a little too much, criticizing American policy, for example, and Christians are much more willing, or non-Gentiles, to criticize American policies. You talk to Jews about these things, they start getting fidgety. How can we say this about our host country? Because that's how they see it. They don't see it as really, really, really home. We're culturally American, we watch Seinfeld, we do all these things, but the Jew always feels that at the end of the day, this is not his home. So anytime you identify yourself with Israel, especially in America, you're getting on shaky ground and you feel uncomfortable.
There are those who argue that part of the reason why American Jews sometimes have trouble with Israeli public policy is that they're afraid that in some way the general American society will begin to condemn Israel, and if they condemn Israel, they will condemn the American Jew. Do you understand what I mean?
Yes.
And I'm wondering I'm not sure it's always true, but I think there is some truth to it. And I think that very often American Jews who tend to be liberal, and there's so much about the liberal orientation, which I personally gravitate to and feel is wonderful, and there is a degree of Jewish awareness of social responsibility, which tends to be identified with a liberal position. I do not demonize, Yishai, those who disagree or would call themselves conservative as opposed to liberal. And I find there's too much polarization and demonization within the Jewish community of anybody who disagrees with you. Anybody. And what's interesting for me personally as a host here on Shalom TV is that when I ask a question that tries to probe someone on the left, I get all kinds of criticism from the left. When I have someone and I try to pose a question that probes them who's on the right emails me, I'm too much on the left. So no matter what I do, I'm too far left or too far right. And my own sense is I tend to be a centrist. And I believe that there is truth on both sides. Ele ve'ele, both are the words of the living God. And that I wish the Jewish community were more open to understanding the position of those who disagree with them. But when it comes to Israel, very often I have the sense that there are Jews who are worried that if Israel appears to do something that isn't lovely, that it will come back to bite the American Jew. And this is especially true in how the Palestinian-Israeli conflict is viewed and how very many Jews are critical over the top, in my mind, of what Israeli policy is vis-a-vis what you interestingly call our cousins. It's not a phrase you hear in the Jewish community much. You don't hear American Jews talking about our cousins, the Arabs. And even as you said, I know there are people who are wondering, are you being in some way disingenuous? Do you really feel that the Arab-Palestinian, let alone the Arab-Israeli,
Right.
the Arab-Palestinian is your cousin, or really, Yishai, do you feel that if you could have your way, every Arab, be he Palestinian or right now an Israeli citizen, and so many people don't understand that there are Israeli citizens who are Arabs, but really, Yishai, is your agenda ultimately to cleanse Israel of the Arab?
Great questions. You bundled a lot of stuff in there. Let me parse it out.
Yes.
Let me, as we say,
Please.
drill down a little bit here.
Okay.
Number one, with regard to the liberal issue, liberalism is compatible with Judaism more so than anything else in terms of the simple idea that Jewish people are liberal. What does liberal mean? It means that we care about liberties. And that is the position of Abraham, who is praying for the people of Sodom and trying to find some good in them. Okay, that is the default position of the Jewish people. I tell my conservative friends, I say to them, you guys, you are liberal. And they sometimes take offense. I say, you're as liberal as it gets, because you believe in the value, the intrinsic value of every human being. That is a liberal position. And in the Middle East, Israel, I don't care what side of the spectrum politically you're in, Israel is the most, by far, light years away, the most liberal country in the Middle East in terms of everything. It sometimes has to take a more defensive posture, which comes out just like Lincoln suspended habeas corpus during the Civil War. When you're in a defensive posture, when you have a war going on, so you take back liberties a little bit so that you can, protect yourself, because sometimes liberties are used against you.
Yeah, and that's not appreciated at all by a whole segment of American Jewry.
You have to sometimes step back and realize what Israel is. It's a tiny country in a sea of folks who are being victimized also by the jihadist ideology. And it's very easy for people to forget that Israel is a country with its back to the wall. When you're an Arab standing in the Middle East, let's say you're standing in Jerusalem, you look north towards Lebanon and Syria and Turkey, which is a Muslim country. You look to the east, you see Jordan, Iraq, and then Iran. You look to the south, you got Saudi Arabia and the Emirates. You look to the east, you have Egypt and the North African countries. You have a huge landmass that's related to you and understands your mindset and speaks your language. When you're an Israeli, what do you look to? You look to around you, you have no country that loves you. You look to Europe, you look farther down, across the Atlantic Ocean far away, you have your American Jewish brothers and sisters, and you have America, which on the one hand has these friends of the Jews, on the other hand, a State Department which is incredibly unfriendly and has been trying to undermine us. With regarding to your Arab question.
Hold on, we will come back to it. I just want to finish the digression.
Yeah.
The argument is that America itself makes some mistakes when in times of conflict, whether we feel we're attacked by the Muslim world, whether we go back to the Civil War, whether we go back to World War II and how we treated the Japanese and interred them, that there is a feeling that a free, democratic country is tested most in how it treats its minorities when it is under siege. And that there are Jews who feel that Israel has made mistakes and uses the fact that they are in a conflict with the Arab world and the Palestinians in particular. They use it as a cover or an excuse that permits them to do things which Jews would normally not do, and which many Jews are uncomfortable in terms of the way Israel treats the Palestinians on the West Bank and how it does not yet give the Arab Israeli an equal share in the Israeli system.
Okay. So first thing is to understand that we are in a defensive posture. And yes, you make mistakes when you're in a defensive posture because you're in a kind of subtle state of war. So there's one thing in your whole argument which I needed to kind of fix, a little attitudinal change. We don't criticize Israeli policy. We are Jewish people are part and parcel of Israeli policy. And that's something I want to impart to all the viewers. Jewish people have to understand.
What do you mean?
I mean to say that Israel is the state of the Jewish people and not the state of the Israelis. We don't criticize policy, we get involved in policy. If you're about criticizing policy and not being involved in policy, then you're not in the game. You got to be in it, you got to have some skin in it, some kind of skin.
So you're never offended when American Jews criticize Israel?
I welcome it if they're involved in the story.
And what does it mean to be involved, Yishai?
It means to come there, try to get there once a year. It means to try to spend your money there. It means that if your kid says, I want to go on a trip, you don't say to them, oh, no. You say to them, sure, absolutely, I'm behind you 100%. And if, God forbid, your kid comes to you and says, you know what, Mom and Dad, all this education has paid off and I love Israel and I want to move there, you say to them, son, I'm right with you. I'm right behind you. I'm so proud of you. And that's not what happens all the time. Having skin in the game means having skin in the game. And loving your country and putting it first and understanding what a project we're involved in. That's what having a skin in the game. If you're sitting back sniping at it and just waiting to see what happens, analyzing it, you're an analyst. And I say, don't be an analyst, be an activist. That's what this lifetime's about. So be involved in the game. Be involved. I get Reform people a lot of times tell me, we don't like this is happening, this is happening. I said, listen, move there. Let's duke it out in Knesset. Come on. I'm not trying to limit you. I want you to be involved. The opposite. I want you to be my neighbor. I want you to fight it out with me. That's why we do it in the Middle East. And yes, we are in a defensive posture because our raison d'etre is not to be a democratic country. Democratic country is a value, an important value, one that we seek to grow. It's not the number one value. The number one value is to be the never again state. Right? The number one value is to create a Jewish state which allows the Jewish zero tolerance for Jewish injury and death and protects the Jewish people's bodily safety first. Second is the cultural growth of the Jewish people, the return to Jewish, authentic Jewish culture and values and falling in love with being Jewish again. And within that is liberal values of the other. And I want to see those values grow, but they're not first. And we're still not there at a place of
What's
peace.
first again? Say it again. It's interesting.
First and foremost is to create the never again state. It means to say that if there's an Ahmadinejad in this world that calls for the destruction of the Jewish people, as the Talmud says, if somebody wakes up in the morning to kill you, you get up just a little earlier and you get them first. Our job is to not allow people like Ahmadinejad to say things like he does and to prepare for what he does.
Okay. I want to emphasize what you've just said. And it's not said enough. Very often I sit with Jews who talk in wonderful ways about what Jewish values are. And they want American Jewry and they want Israeli Jewry to somehow reflect the best of Jewish values. Do you know what Jewish value is never included in that? The Jewish value that when a rodef comes to pursue you, when someone comes to do harm to you, you don't have an option. You have a mitzvah, a responsibility to use whatever the minimum force is to protect yourself. And that one of the great differences between the Jewish tradition's view of life and other Western religious traditions is there are religions that teach if someone slaps you on the right cheek, turn and give them your left cheek.
Right.
The Jewish tradition says don't get hit on in the first cheek. Don't get hit the first time
That's
on
right.
your right cheek. That doesn't mean you're brutal, but you have a responsibility to stop anyone who wants to strike you. And the Talmudic principle is their blood is no redder than yours, meaning they have no more human dignity or human essence than you do, and you do not have the right to permit yourself to be injured. And the state of Israel, it seems to me, has as its goal to be as understanding of what it was to be a slave and to free everyone
Right.
from slavery, especially the non-Jew. We understand.
No, first especially the Jew.
No, I'm saying
First,
that. I'm
and
saying,
then especially the non-Jew.
but that the first responsibility is to ourselves,
Right.
namely to keep ourselves safe, to keep ourselves from being slaves, and once that is achieved, we then care about freeing every other slave. Now that's the essence of Jewish values, Yishai.
Right.
And people who argue the state of Israel should reflect the finest of Jewish values often forget the basic fundamental premise of Jewish values, which is the first thing you do is you survive as a righteous community doing, gemilut chasadim, acts of love and kindness, but you must survive first. And what you've said is something I rarely hear a Jewish teacher say, that our first responsibility, the highest Jewish value, is ultimately to create a Jewish people who is safe and secure.
Mark, I hear people talking about funding for Holocaust studies. And I say to them, that's all good. That's very important. As long as at the very same time as you're funding Holocaust studies, there isn't a guy who's calling for the next Holocaust at the very same time and we don't pay attention to him. It's a shame for us. And Israel also acts immorally. By the way, critical of Israeli policy. When you're an Israeli citizen, you're a democratic voter. That's your job, is to be critical. So I'm always critical. That's what I do. But when Israel has allowed 5,000 rockets to be built up in South Lebanon by people who we know have used them and will use them in the future, that is immoral. The Jewish state cannot allow a buildup of 5,000 rockets in the hands of Hezbollah. Now Sinai is becoming the next staging ground for Hamas. Egypt has basically ceded control. The new Egypt has basically ceded control of the Sinai. They simply don't have the wherewithal to protect its borders. They could talk about an agreement, no agreement. They don't have it. And now it's becoming a Hamas staging ground. That's unacceptable. Israel has to act. It has to act first. It has to act preemptively because its first concern is to save every Jewish child. And you said about brutality. If I allow my children to be brutalized, that is brutal. That is me being brutal. I cannot allow my children to be brutalized. And for God's sakes, we are only 60 some odd years after the Holocaust. It's not a joke. So you talk about live in fear. It's like, let's not live in fear. Let's live in reality and react to bad things.
You know, I love talking to you, and I keep doing digression after digression. I'm going to bring you back to the question, do you want the Arabs out? But I want to ask you, I want you to follow the digression one more moment. Do you want Israel to launch a preemptive strike against the nuclear capability of Iran's attempt to build a nuclear weapon?
You know, they make it out to be like, all these planes gotta get ready and we all take off and we do this whole thing where we bomb these underground bunkers. I say take the head out. There are bad people at the pinnacle of the head. The society of Iran desperately wants to throw off these despotic rulers. Arrest the guys. Do what you got to do. They're the bad guys. By the way, what did America do with Osama bin Laden? They tried to bring him to justice. Didn't work out. They took him out. There are some bad guys. They repress their own people. Remember this. If you ever need a liberal kind of feeling to make sure that, because you don't want to protect yourself too much, but you feel bad for somebody else, remember that Ahmadinejad, he is a repressor of his own people. And he stands at the pyramid. People say to me, if you take him out, somebody else will arise. Not so quick. Because they'll know that we're there to get them. And to me, it's like, why do we have to talk about this big bombing thing? It's simple. The guy flies over Havana. Just bring down the plane, land the plane, take him out, cuff him, put him in jail, try him, bring the proof, do what you got to do. Be smart.
Is that realistic?
It's so realistic. It's sad that that the UN was founded to make sure that another Holocaust doesn't happen again. It does not doing that. Realistic, I think it's much more realistic than me thinking about flying who knows how many kilometers in order to bomb underground bunkers. And I don't think that's the problem. I don't think the nuclear ambition is the problem. That's just a symptom. And I think the people of Iran, as I've heard from many Iranians, ask any Iranian Persian living in LA. There's 1 million Persians, Jewish and non-Jewish, living out there. Ask them what they think of Ahmadinejad. They hate him. They loathe him. They think that he's destroyed their country.
So do you think that's really the plan of the Israeli government?
I wish it was. That's all I could say about that. I make my case, and again, I write, I talk about it, and maybe somebody... I know that I wrote some stuff in an article about Israel being the shining light of the Middle East and the Star of Liberty, and that really the Arab Spring is probably inspired by the Israeli life. And I wrote that in Ynet, and a week later, Benjamin Netanyahu said, almost line by line, so I thought to myself, maybe somebody's reading what I'm writing. So.
I was at a group this past weekend, and there were Jews who really believe that Israel has permitted itself to become an apartheid regime.
I can only roll my eyes at that when I see Arab Knesset members, Arab Supreme Court justices. We had a Supreme Court justice who put away the president of Israel in jail.
But the reason they say it is, and I want to make sure I've stated it right.
Okay.
Israel is in control of the West Bank.
Yes.
It controls the Arab population called Palestinians on the West Bank.
Yes.
And although it controls that part of the world, it does not extend citizenship rights to the Palestinians who it administers. Some people would say it occupies, whatever word you use. Mm-hmm. Israel is in control of that piece of territory, and it is not extending equal citizenship rights to 1 million to 1.5 million Palestinians living on the West Bank.
Yes.
And therefore the argument is Israel has become an apartheid state. That's what I hear from liberal Jews.
Yes.
And these people do not consider themselves to be anti-Israel.
Right. No, they're not.
They want Israel to be and endure and to survive and to be the home of the Jewish people. But they are deeply troubled in their hearts that Israel has created an apartheid system, and therefore Israel must create a two-state solution so that it will end the cancer of the apartheid regime that is destroying the Israeli soul.
Well said. I think that let's not overstate the case. There's definitely a population that does not have Israeli citizenship. They're not living in an apartheid regime in the sense that jobs aren't blocked away from them. They can marry Jews, and there's much more normal atmospherics. My neighbors, the Arabs that live in Jerusalem, are in a quasi-status. I meet Arabs that live in Judea and Samaria. They do well. Ramallah is doing great. It's one of the most successful cities around. Absolutely, 100%, there is not an apartheid regime. However, I agree with you that there is a lessening of democratic opportunities for the Arabs, and that's not good. I don't like it. I hate it. I hate it. It sickens me. I hate it. I hate having to live like that. But I also hate the fact that the reason that exists is because we live in this defensive posture, which we're afraid that these people will try to come into our country and undermine it. And then the consciousness came that the only way to deal with these people, with this huge influx of immigrants that came from the Arab world around 1850 and afterwards, that the only way to deal with them is to cut away parts. Well, we figured out already that we can't do that. We can't cut away parts of our homeland for a few reasons. One, it's unjust to us. And there's no, as the Arab Palestinians always say, there's no peace without justice. There's no peace. I cannot have peace with you if I'm going to have to give away parts of my ancestral homeland where my blood runs through the rivers, because this is the people, our peoplehood was born here, our history is here.
So therefore you're against the two-state solution? I
am 100% against the two-state solution for a variety of reasons, one of which is that land is mine. The second of which is that by this two-state solution would immediately empower jihadist elements, as we saw in Gaza, and actually, of course, first kill tolerant Arabs. That's the biggest lie in the business of peace in the Middle East, is that it's not stated what Arafat said, which is the bullets of the revolution are 10. 9 are for the collaborators. 1 is for the Zionists. The first to get it in the head, sadly, is the loving, collaborating, tolerant Arab who thinks that his Jewish cousins are not so bad after all. So it's a tremendous problem. I have my solutions. I believe that there are democratic ways to move it forward with certain contours that aren't as robustly democratic.
And you understand that Jewish leadership since the 1930s has believed that the ultimate way to resolve the conflict is to share the land.
Share the land. I'm willing to share the land, absolutely.
No, they're willing to share,
under Israeli sovereignty.
When they mean share the land, they're willing to do a partition.
Well, they're going to hurt 77% of, for example, Palestinians living in Jerusalem who say, if Palestine rules over us, we have to run away and move to Jewish Jerusalem. So if you want to do a great disfavor to our Arab cousins, then you could, institute another Arab despotic dictatorship. If you'd like to do that,
So
the good folks at Hamas and Fatah will oblige you quickly.
Okay.
And they'll do exactly what they did in Gaza. I got Arabs, my neighbors, who tell me my sister lives in Gaza. It's a nightmare. So, if you want to do that to the Arab world, take away our homeland, go against international law, create another despotic, regime, that will obviously use it as a staging ground against us.
So we're almost out of time.
Ahead.
So Yishai Fleisher, everybody watching right now wants to know, if you don't want a two-state solution, and you appreciate the fact, it bothers you that there are these million and a half Palestinian Arabs who do not have citizenship, what would you do instead of a two-state solution?
First thing I would call it the Yiddish Kup answer, okay? Not the let's be dumb and cut away parts of our land. That's the first part of the answer. The answer is very simple. Annex, assert sovereignty over your ancestral homeland because it makes every bit of sense. We've already gone so far towards doing
you
that.
want to formally annex the West Bank?
Absolutely, just like we did Jerusalem
and
Golan Heights.
What do you do with the Arab population?
Simple.
Which brings us back to the question, what does Yishai Fleisher really want to do with the Arabs in Israel who are now Israeli citizens and those who live on the West Bank?
Mark, if I had a dream about a Middle East without Arabs, I would have to move to Brooklyn, okay? Because that's just not going to happen. It doesn't matter what I even want. I also look at reality, and you know what? I'm the guy who's the most forward in making alternative peace with my, separate peace with my Arab neighbors all the time. I'm making more efforts than anybody else around. So nobody's going to call me a racist. Nobody's going to tell me that I want to kick away people. I want people who respect and love Israel to live with me as my neighbors with rights. I want those people who want to undermine our country to go away and find self-determination in 22 other Arab countries. You respect my rights to live there. And by the way, what I'm just said to you is exactly how the Middle East thinks and talks. Respect, honor, asserting your rights. If you don't know how to be a Middle Easterner, you're going to be out. Okay? You have to know how to be a Middle Easterner. You have to know how to argue in the shuk. If you think that arguing in the shuk in the outdoor market is buying something in Walgreens, you're wrong. All right? If you don't know how to act as a Middle Easterner, you don't know how to cut a deal in the Middle East. So assert yourself. For the Arabs living in Judea and Samaria, immediately give them resident rights, residence benefits first. Second thing, create a pathway to citizenship for those Arabs who really respect and love, truly want to live in a Jewish state. They will have to serve in the Israeli army or in national service. By the way, Haredi Jews, every Jew, black, hat, ultra-Orthodox Jew who lives and benefits from the state of Israel has to serve in the army under common sense. So let us make it a one law for everybody. If they will go through the process of swearing allegiance, going to the army, paying their taxes, not acting seditiously, we will grant them citizenship. We want to do that. However, I will make a caveat, and my caveat is that I don't think that minorities should be able to pass on that citizenship by heredity. I think that every young Arab, Christian, Cherkessi, every other kind of person who comes and visits us should have to earn it anew because it's a Jewish state first. And all the others are welcome to come join us.
Whenever you hear Americans talk about the bond between the United States of America and Israel,
right,
it's always grounded on democracy. That Israel is the only democratic state in a wilderness, a Middle East wilderness of totalitarianism. And that, therefore, I think many Jews hear you talk about democracy and you're making it at least second, if not further than second.
No, second.
Second. But that ultimately there is a fear that you would take the underpinning of the American support for the state of Israel away.
Okay. So a few things. First thing is that democracy is the technical machinery of a far superior value, which is called liberty. Okay? Democracy is the thing that ensures liberty. What links Israel and the United States is the concepts of liberty. That's one of the concepts. And the other one, of course, is the historical. We all know that the founding fathers of the United States were lovers of the Bible, lovers of Hebrew, great students of it as well, and were really amazing folks. And they crafted an idea about liberty through the usage of their interpretation of democracy, the creation of a system that enabled really a country for the people, by the people, a country that has the unique, really unique gift of history of imparting a new idea that the state should be subservient to the people and not the other way around. That is an amazing thing. Government, according to the American system, is to always be distrusted. And that's an amazing thought. Nobody ever came up with this thought. And that will forever be the United States' great gift to the world. That power corrupts and that people should always distrust the power. That is a brilliant innovation. Israel is, as you said before, a kind of lone country that stands for liberty. But, Mark, big problem with that. When I show Israel off, when I present Israel as a Western outpost or an outpost of democracy, I have immediately said that Israel is not a Middle Eastern country. I have to be very careful because I need to identify Israel as a Middle Eastern country, or else I'm always going to be an outsider there. I'm going to be some kind of zit that you can pop. I'm outside of the rest of the region. First, we have to be Middle Easterners. We've got to be brown people. We've got to be people of the region. We've got to talk Middle Eastern talk. We've got to know that the language of the Middle East is not democracy, it's respect and honor. That's the language of the Middle East. That's how things work. So our bond with America is important, but we need to also understand that we got to be a regional player. We got to care about regional things. And overly linking up with America, being white people that have a completely different system of governance, it's not so healthy. It comes with a big price. It comes with a price tag. And that's something that people don't think about. We in Israel need to link up more with OPEC and the Arab League than we do with NATO.
But is it possible to do that at the same time remain close to the American Jewish community, which doesn't see itself as Western and white?
Yeah. Well, that's the whole thing, That's what I started this program saying to you, that the Atlantic Ocean actually splits us up culturally on a huge, tremendous level. Israelis are more Middle Eastern, and by the way, the more democratic Israel will be, the more Middle Eastern it will be, and the more native it'll be, because they will come. Just like, by the way, locally in the Arab countries, the more democratic they are these days, the more Muslim they become. It's a funny irony. Democracy by itself doesn't yield what you think it yields. It sometimes yields a very local representation. I am in desperate warfare to keep us linked. That's why I'm flying over here. That's why I'm on your show right now. My big efforts is to keep our nation linked up, to that people will understand what's going on in Israel, that Israelis will understand American Jews, that we will see one another more often. I'm working right now on a Knesset bill to try to make sure that American Jews that want to come 2 or 3 times a year during the festival, during our Hajj, which we called Chag, we got the original word, okay? That our 3 festivals will be cheaper and easier to come to Israel, so you can have more skin in the game, so that a kid in college says, I could go to Acapulco, or I could go to Jerusalem for spring break. Which one is it? I'm going to make that choice. Oh, Jerusalem's only $500. Okay, that sounds cool. I'm going to have a great time in the homeland. I'm going to reconnect. That's what I want to do. I want to make sure that our peoples don't split apart. There's no question about it that our peoplehood's future is in Israel. Just open any Jewish newspaper. What do they have on the cover? Some local kashrut issue, an Erev issue. What do they have? What's the main issues on the agenda of the Jewish people? It's Israel. That's what's going on in Israel. That's the discussion that we're having. So we have to put Israel first. We have to build it no matter what station we are in life. Not to feel guilt, not to feel distant. And that's really what I wanted to impart to you. We have to have a fearless attitude, and we have to be stiff-necked people. We have to be so darn stubborn right now. So many people want to push us off the Israel story. They want to make it look too complex, too dirty, too impossible, too apartheid, too this, that. All these dirty words, because Jews don't like to be called dirty words. They get all upset about it. And that's it. I don't want to deal with Israel. We got to make Israel sexy, attractive, the future. We got to put our efforts into it. We got to send our kids there. We got to turn them onto the story. We got to give them our narrative. We got to give them our vision. That why did we exodus Egypt 3,500 years ago? So we could come to the Jewish state, to the state of Israel. So this moment is coming, and I'm sweating, and I see that a lot of people are responding to the idea that we have to get together, no matter what, and build that Jewish state that we've been waiting for.
It is simply a joy talking to you. And Yishai, no one at the moment is saying some of the things you're saying, and I believe it's very important for American Jewry to hear your message, for you to raise the issues. I am honored to be involved with you. I wish you kol tuv v'hatzlacha in all of your endeavors at jewishpress.com. You are being very creative in the work you do, bringing more information to Israel. It's wonderful that you bring Eye on Zion here to Shalom TV. And whenever there's a way for us to work together, I feel you do a service to the Jewish people and to the Shalom TV community. I wish you kol tuv v'hatzlacha. You're very, very special. Always, always.
And congratulations on the new linear channel.
Thank
I'm excited.
you.
We're going to get it broadcast in Israel soon.
I hope you get it done. We would love to be in Israel. By the way, you told me that you had a very interesting meeting with some Jews in Nashville, Tallahassee.
Yes.
What was it?
In Tallahassee, Florida, I was videoing the student conference. Sometimes I'm in front of the stage, sometimes I'm behind the camera. And the kids asked me, the young people asked me, where is this going to be broadcast? I said, Shalom TV. They said, Shalom TV, we have it on cable. and you know, I just think, I think this is not a channel. I think this is a tool for education. I think that you've taken the lead in using television which is the tool of education of our time. It's not the classroom. It's television. And to bring Jewish values and Jewish culture back into the mindset, into the foreground of people's minds is incredibly important. You've put a lot at stake into it, and you know, nobody's behind you except for your tenacious and stiff-necked will to get it done. And I think that you should be applauded, and I hope that Shalom TV educates thousands and millions of Jews and Gentiles about the beauty and love of the Jewish world and of Israel. I want to thank you, Mark.
That's very sweet of you. I appreciate it very, very much, Yishai. And that was our meeting with Yishai Fleisher, an extraordinary human being. He's the head of jewishpress.com in Israel. He does Eye on Zion here on Shalom TV. You know him, you see him often. And I'll say it again, you don't have to agree with everything Yishai says, but boy, the passion and the love of human beings and of State of Israel and what he wants for the Jewish people is just extraordinary. And I wish every one of us and everybody on the American Jewish scene had his embrace of all things Jewish. And so it's an honor for me to be able to bring him to you. If you want to be in touch with Yishai Fleisher, first of all, you can visit him on his website. I want to make sure I get it right. Give me exactly how people can be in touch with you.
YishaiFleisher.com. It's the home for articles, for the lessons that I give, for the radio that I do, and the videos that I make here at Shalom TV. They're also at YishaiFleisher.com. It's without a C, you know, no C in Fleisher, and the rest is easy enough.
So now you know how to be in touch with Yishai Fleisher directly. As always, I want to hear any thoughts or comments you have to the ideas that Yishai expressed here on Shalom TV. Please be in touch with me, email me, write me, post on our Facebook wall, tweet me. I look forward to hearing from you. Until the next time, I'm Mark Golub. Be well, my friends.
We would be pleased to send a complimentary DVD of this program to anyone who wishes to support Shalom TV with a tax-deductible gift of $36, double high or more, to the nonprofit organization Jewish Education in Media. Simply visit the Shalom TV website homepage and click on the Donate button to make a donation by PayPal or your credit card. And please indicate the program for which you would like a DVD. Or you can send your tax-deductible check made out to GEM, Post Office Box 180, Riverdale Station, Bronx, New York, 10471. And again, please remember to indicate which program you would like to receive on DVD with our compliments. And we thank you for your kind support.
L'chaim is a presentation of Jewish education in media.